For all the fights you've seen over the years, what can you compare this one to?
Well, I don't compare it to fights of another era, because that's unfair. I mean, I wish I had Muhammad and Joe with me today as young men, because they would make a lot of money on pay-per-view, which didn't exist then. But it is, the world changes. I mean, is this fight bigger than Dempsey-Tunney, which did 120,000 people in a stadium? Well, people say, but there was no television. Yeah, there was no television. There was radio, but no television. So everything changes. All you can say for sure is this is the biggest fight of this century. Forget the last century. That's not fair.
Bob Arum, Frazier, Tyson Holyfield, these are all profound, humongous fights in the sport. Do you think this fight will transcend them?
You can't say that.
Why not?
It's a different era.
Okay.
It's a different era. I mean, imagine if those people had the social networking that we have now, if those people had 100 million homes in the U.S. and Canada who could get pay-per-view. But you didn't. You didn't. I mean, can you believe when we did Ali Fraser, we did it on a Monday night because that's the only time you could get theaters Monday. We were only able to go to 400 locations in the United States because it was served by telephone company long lines, and the fight was Monday night. Nobody went into work around the country on Monday morning. Everybody was, because remember the political implication. Ali against the Vietnam War, everybody was becoming against the war. Poor Fraser saddled with being for the war, which he wasn't, and it became like a whole political thing.
Bob, you've had your issues with the other side for years. You've had some choice words for Al Heyman, Floyd Mayweather, but finally we were able to put those issues aside to get this fight done. Can you talk a little bit about the negotiation process, speaking to Al Heyman, speaking to Mayweather Promotions?
The point is, I'm sorry to disappoint you. It was really Moonves and Plepler, chairman of CBS, the chairman of HBO, that worked hard to bring reason and put it together. The actual negotiations with Mayweather Promotions on the essential points, not the nonsense, the essential point, took 2 hours. The actual negotiations with the networks on the essential point took 12 minutes. So this was an easy fight, except for the egos on the side. Guys posturing, screw you, and
Bob, how do you feel about boxing being on public television, NBC Sports now?
You mean network though?
Yes.
Well, that's great. It's great. I mean, we just did a fight in China on Chinese national television. Did 19 million homes on Saturday.
Bob, one last question, Bob.
We gotta go. Bob, Walter Alvarez says hi.
Mensch, thank you.
You've been known to throw a few numbers at yourself. Do you want to give us some estimates on what?
No, I'm not going to do estimates, because any estimate I give becomes promoter hyperbole, you know. And why should I give estimate? Because the answer is I don't know. I mean, you figure out how many homes we're going to do. You multiply by around 100. You take off, say, the percent that the cable system satellite providers get, which is being negotiated. You add the gate, you add the sponsorship, and you add the foreign revenue, and that's in the pot. You take off a couple of million for expenses, and that's what the fighters are going to divide. I don't know the number. I really don't.
So it's a pretty easy formula.
What?
It's a pretty easy formula, though.
It's a very easy formula. All the other numbers are really able to calculate within a few $1 million, except for the pay-per-view. And the pay-per-view number is, you know, if I say 4, somebody says it's usual bullshit, it's only 3. If I say 3, they say no, it's going to be 2.5. You can't satisfy the price, right? So I'm saying nothing, because the answer is I don't know. I really, truly don't know. Yes, Bill.
Steve, you've had to put aside a lot of less than friendly feelings about the people you're doing business with here. How did you do that? How did you get yourself to just rise above all that?
Well, number one, it started, and now, you know, and I've told, of course, half the press said I was bullshitting and everything, you know, usual. But it started when Les Moonves came to my house and said that Les Moonves being the chairman of CBS, and he sat down at my house and he visited me because I had my knee operated on a couple of occasions to tell me that he wanted to make this fight happen and to go to Manny and discuss with Manny the terms that would be acceptable. And we had frequent dialogues, and each guy had a fight. This happened before each guy fought last year. Floyd was fighting, I think, September, and Manny was fighting in Macau in November. And I felt confident at that time because Moonves was the kind of guy that he was, that he would do whatever he could to make this happen. And of course, immediately I got in touch with Richard Plepler, the chairman of HBO, and found out that he was on board, that he thought the fight would happen. And I put Plepler together with Moonves, they know each other, of course, and they discussed the fact that the fight should happen. So by the time I was in Macau, I knew that there was significant chance that the fight would happen. Meanwhile, I had never talked to the other side about it. Sometime in December, Leslie called me up and he said, would I mind coming to his house for a meeting, it was a Saturday, with Al Heyman. And I said, sure. And we discussed all of the major points. And within 2 hours, without much argument at all, we reached an understanding on the major points. I then told him that he had to get back with Richard Plepler and talk about the network deal, which he did. And in 12 minutes, they came to a deal. Of course, being me, I shut my mouth off, and the guy who I didn't give the scoop to excoriated me because somebody who worked for Showtime said a deal hadn't been made, which was correct. The deal hadn't been made, but the principal points had been agreed to. And at that particular point, there was, as far as I knew with Manny, he was all in. I wasn't sure that the other side could deliver Mayweather, and it wasn't until that basketball game where they met by happenstance because Manny was in Miami judging a Miss Universe contest and couldn't get back to the West Coast because there was the storm, ice storm, and they couldn't get planes down to Miami. So he was stuck in Miami, and being a basketball fan, and the coach of the Heat being a fellow Filipino, he reached out and got tickets to the game, and lo and behold, across the arena, Floyd Mayweather came in, because he likes basketball too, and Michael Kahns went over to Mayweather, had Mayweather come to speak to Manny, and Mayweather asked if he could meet with Manny in the suite. At that point, Manny and Michael Kahns were convinced that Mayweather wasn't ducking the fight and wanted the fight. And then it was wrapping up the details, the language in the agreement, which was excruciating, but it shouldn't have been. But essentially, the fight was done. So if you asked how I dealt with the other side, having had all this animosity. The answer is, except for that 2-hour meeting, I didn't.